Hi. All right. So in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about the situational determinants of obedience. This one will hopefully be a nice, crisp, short video. I always like to try to aim for those. So there are three things three contextual features that seem to have a big impact on the degree of conformity um, in the contexts that we were in the examples of conformity that we were talking about in the last video. Size of the majority, unanimity of the majority, and then the importance of the task. So we'll tackle those each in turn. So the size of the majority matters with regard to in conformity in the sense that as the majority size relative to the minority size in a group grows, then conformity is going to increase. I think that's fairly intuitive for most people, but a couple of things that are worth pointing out that this applies to both informational and normative conformity. So as the as the relative size of a group grows, people holding a majority position and people holding a minority position, the tendency for people who hold the minority position to conform to the majority's expectations increases as the relative size of the majority group gets larger. But interestingly, incremental increases in the majority have declining social impact on conformity. So that as that larger group gets correspondingly larger, the amount of additional conformity that it produces starts to diminish. So if going from a 5-to-1 ratio to a 6-to-1 ratio increases conformity significantly, then going to a 7-to-1 ratio will also increase conformity, but less overall than that going from the 5-to-1 to the 6-to-1 ratio. So it's kind of a declining social impact, a little bit of declining marginal impact as the increments of the majority size increase continue to go up. Unanimity, and that just again sort of refers to the degree to which the opinion is shared consistently among the majority. Consistency and unanimity within the majority also has the impact of increasing conformity. So, for example, in the experiments done by Solomon Asch on line length, the number of Confederates in terms of pushing the conformity of the participant to identify a line that was not in fact the same length as the comparison line. The number of Confederates was less important than the unanimity of the Confederates giving the incorrect response. So remember, in the Asch experiments, participants, and there was one participant in the room, and everybody else was a Confederate in the experiment. They were all shown 3 lines and a comparison line, and they were asked to match up the comparison line with which of the 3 lines was the same length. And it was a fairly obvious answer, right? This wasn't like very, very small incremental differences in line length. It was pretty obvious what the correct answer was. But when the participants in the experiment all gave the wrong answer, the participant was much more likely to give a wrong answer because of the unanimity of the responses. Not surprisingly, then, there is a lot less conformity when a Confederate defects and gives a correct response. So when one of the people participating in when one of the experimenters who is posing as somebody who's participating in the experiment, when they actually join in with the actual participant and correctly identify the line that is the same length as the comparison line, conformity drops, right? The conformity to the majority opinion drops considerably. It doesn't drop as much when the Confederate defects but then gives a wrong response, right? So it's still, there's less conformity when the participant in the experiment has an ally in that they disagree with the majority opinion. But when the disagreement, the departure from the majority is still to give a wrong answer, just a different wrong answer, the amount of conformity is less. I hope that makes sense, but if not, just let me know and I'll try to illustrate it or explain it a little more clearly. And then finally, of course, the importance of the task. The importance of the task and its impact on conformity is actually kind of complicated. So I'm going to take my time and see if I can make this clear and understandable. So conformity, when it comes to task importance, conformity reflects an interaction between task difficulty and the importance of the consequences for the participant. So how difficult a task is and how important a task is. So when you have a task that is low difficulty but very important, you get less conformity with the majority opinion than when the task is less difficult or low difficulty and low importance. And this seems to be a function of both the confidence of the participant and relatively low risk if they're wrong, right? So if I feel pretty confident in my response, even though everyone else is telling me something else, but it doesn't really matter much if I get it wrong anyway, I'm much more likely to deviate from the majority opinion. And the conformity here in this particular instance seems to be normative rather than informational. So when conformity goes up, because while the task is the conformity goes up because the task is low difficulty and less important, then it tends to be informational conformity rather than normative conformity, right? A low difficulty task that's very important means that somebody is much more likely to stake their reputation even if it looks like they're wrong, because being right is important, right? So as the importance of the task goes up, conformity is gonna go down. Okay. Again, I hope that makes sense. Then the inverse of this seems to be true when the task is of high difficulty but low importance. So tasks that have a high degree of difficulty but relatively low importance tend to result in more conformity than tasks that have a high degree of difficulty and high importance. What this tends to be interpreted as meaning is that people might be unsure of their opinions, but want to be correct. And so they'll kind of go along with the majority in this instance because they have less confidence in their opinion. This conformity tends to be more informational than normative, where the other form tends to be more normative than informational. This is more likely to be informational than normative. So again, like I said, a nice quick short one in this instance. If any of these things need clarification or elaboration, please let me know in class or in the discussion comments, or send me an email, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.